In the previous episode, we dove into how to memorize structured information, and we talked about memorization techniques. So now we're going to go to the third in what I kind of see as the triad of different techniques that you use to learn is, you need to be able to read fast, you need to be able to memorize things, but the third is you need to be able to structure information in such a way that you can memorize it. Because if you speed read and you find the answer, how do you know if you still know it in a week or in 2 weeks? But you can hardly memorize an entire book. So you need to find a way to summarize and structure information. And the most effective, efficient way that I found is mind mapping. And this was actually another wow moment for me. After spending, pretty much a decade in school, really being poor at this, taking a ton of notes, not even being able to read my own notes. And the only real way that I knew of reproducing stuff and memorizing it is simply just copying it, just literally rewriting the entire chapter. So when I learned this, I was really bad also at memorizing lectures. I would listen to somebody. If I was interested, I would memorize it. But if I wasn't, I wasn't. I couldn't write fast enough to keep up. So everything would kind of blur together. And then I followed a training by Buzan. And Buzan actually had a similar experience. And he created a method called mind mapping. And mind mapping kind of is what the word says. It's a way to map the structure of knowledge in your brain. Remember how we talked about, complexity is compound simplicity? That's true here as well. That he found a way to show complexity visually. And he's pretty strict in how to do it. There's the right way of doing mind maps. And there's actually a lot of pretty complex underlying principles. And again, it would take a 1 or 2 day workshop to really train you on these skills to make sure that you can apply them. But the core thing is that you take a sheet, you take them, in landscape mode. In the middle, you'll write down the concept that you want to work with, and then you'll start branching out. And ideally, you want between 5 or 7 branches. So if you have a book, you try to bring it back to 5 to 7 main topics, or a speech, or whatever, a chapter, whatever you're trying to learn. And then underneath those branches, you can have sub branches of sub information. And for instance, now I'm talking to you about the different skills to be successful. So the middle will be skills to succeed academically, and then you branch out. And one is self-regulation, one is planning an organization, speed reading is one, memorization is one, mind mapping is one. And we're going to talk about creative thinking next. So this is giving you a little bit of a structure. And then underneath, self-regulation, we talked about different areas, emotional regulation or affect regulation, task initiation. So now you're starting to structure things, but that way you have got a visual representation of what you're doing. And the assignment is also to put a lot of images and colors and use different ways to add visual information, which makes it a lot easier to memorize. And it really forces your brain to process everything and give it meaning. And it adds that sensory information of, that thing on the top right. And by doing this, you're creating a structure. And then when you're trying to see if you understand it, you can actually just really literally take out your mind map and go through it. Okay, do I remember? What was self-regulation again? And he talked about task initiation. Maybe you look under it like, oh yeah, there were 3 or 4 subparts under that. And that gives you a way to, from an overview, come back to the knowledge. And that's so much easier than long text that you need to read through. Especially, again, for top-down thinkers, it forces you to create a top-down overview of the thing you are trying to learn. And now, by doing this, you can kind of review the mind map, just go through the different concepts. You can use stuff like I said, like colors and visualization to add to it, which makes it easier to memorize. And there's actually a fun additional exercise as well. I had people make a mind map and then told them you have to make another mind map, but you cannot use the same literal words that you used on the first one. So for instance, you cannot use the word self-regulation. So now you need to come up with a new word, and that forces your brain to really think about what does this mean? And that's the idea of a mind map is a meaning-focused summary of what you're trying to learn. And the bonus is because you've structured the information so well, it also becomes easier to memorize. Okay, what were the 6 main branches of the mind map? Well, if you use the memorization techniques, it's actually pretty easy to memorize lists. And then, okay, what were the sub-items of self-regulation? So I can memorize the sub-items. So this way you can really, structure information and memorize it in the most effective way. So have you ever heard of mind maps? Have you ever made one? So if not, check it out. Google it, see what these things look like. And how about your kid? Are they good at summarizing? Are they good at note-taking, stuff like that? Do they have these skills? And if so, do they apply them? And if not, why not? And how can we help them learn these skills? If you apply the skills we've talked about now and you've trained them, you train self-regulation, you are working on your planning and organization, you're learning how to speed read, you're memorizing and you're mind mapping, you are easily in the top 5% of any school system, because almost nobody is this conscious in using these skills to be successful and to be effective. So if you want to learn more about this, we've got longer courses where we actually will teach you step by step how to do this, teach you step by step how to guide your kid in learning this. And this really will make a difference in setting them up for academic success.